The dough is rested. I'm now going to begin snaking each of these pieces out until it's roughly 14 inches long and slightly tapered at the end. Because the dough has had an opportunity to rest, it's got beautiful extensibility. It's important that I apply even pressure when I do this so that I'm not tearing the gluten strands that I worked so hard to create. I want to begin with the first set that I rolled out. So I'm going to take my 4 ends and combine them. I want to be mindful if I can see the seam that I have the seam facing down, otherwise I'll see it in my finished loaf. And I want to adhere these 4 ends together very well. Now I'm going to keep making an X, so I'm going to begin by taking far right strand and drawing it over this 3rd strand, and then I'll make an X over this 3rd strand. I'm going to do the same thing now with the 2nd strand here. If my end comes apart, just go back and draw it back together. Always being mindful of where that seam is and trying to apply very even tension as I'm crossing my strands over until I get to the end. When I get to my very end, I will bear down on my ends well so that I can taper it. It should be more tapered at the end than it is in the middle so that I have a wider base. And once I have my loaves, I want to egg wash them before I put them to proof. Again, I want to check to be sure that my ends are really glued together well. And I like to give it an egg wash on the board so that I'm less likely to have it pool up on the sheet tray itself. The egg wash will give added shine. The honey that I have in here will help maintain some of the softness to the loaf that will be enhanced further by the egg wash. I'm going to allow this to proof for another hour at 80 degrees before I go ahead and bake it at 400 degrees. That temperature is reduced slightly to compensate for the honey that's in the formula. The honey will give a robust caramelization. I want to make sure it doesn't caramelize too quickly. My honeyed challah loaves have been proofing for about an hour and a half. I can see they jiggle pretty freely when I shake them. If I touch the side gently with my finger, it holds the impression of my finger. They're ready to bake. I want to egg wash it carefully, making sure I'm not missing any points, which can be tricky with the braids, but I also need to be very gentle because if I knock this down at all at this point, my loaf will not recover and rebound. Now, after you've given a final egg wash to your challah, you have the option of baking it just with that 2nd wash on there, or adorning it with sesame seeds or poppy seeds. Sesame seeds would complement the honey very, very nicely, but I prefer my challah plain. One thing to consider is that it's not unusual to dot the dough of challah with raisins at the new year. The bread then is traditionally served with raisins and with honey as a symbol of a sweet year to come. The honey pairs beautifully with that dried fruit, enhancing the qualities of both the honey and the fruit itself. I like to bake my challah with a little bit of steam if I have the option. So I'll introduce about 2 seconds of steam into the oven chamber when I load the oven with the bread itself. Because it's an enriched dough, it contains oil and it has egg yolks in it as well as the egg wash, it isn't essential to introduce that steam. I just like the more open structure that I get in my finished product. We're going to bake this at 400 degrees for roughly 35 minutes. The last 10 minutes of baking will reduce the oven temperature by 10 degrees so that we don't have too much caramelization on the surface. I hope you enjoyed this lesson on how to make a honeyed challah. To view and print the formula, please consult www.bakingwithhoney.com.